Ukraine and Russia have agreed to swap 1,000 prisoners of war each in a landmark breakthrough after the first day of face-to-face peace talks for more than 3 years. Kharkiv again. My name is Jerome Starkey. I'm the defence editor at the Sun newspaper, and this is Frontline, your weekly roundup of the most important news from the war in Ukraine. Russian and Ukrainian officials have met face-to-face for just under 2 hours in Istanbul today. This is a breakthrough of sorts. These are the first face-to-face talks between Russian and Ukrainian officials since March 2022, when preliminary peace talks broke down when Russia demanded Ukraine's capitulation, its surrender, and details of those Russian atrocities in places like Bucha and Borodyanka just outside Kyiv began to emerge. Now, Rustem Umerov, Ukraine's defense minister, has said that they have agreed to swap 1,000 prisoners of war each. Nobody really knows exactly how many prisoners of war each side holds, but this number in itself is an indication of how many people are in captivity, have been captured as a result of this conflict. And we know from previous prisoner swaps the conditions that Ukrainian prisoners have been held in inside Russia are horrific. Many of them come back emaciated. It appears to be a confidence building gesture, a sign of goodwill, intent perhaps by both sides to get these peace talks off to a good start. If it takes place, and that is a big if, it will be the largest swap of the war so far. But the talks only lasted less than 2 hours, and they appear to have broken up after Russia demanded that Ukrainian forces withdraw from their own territory, that they cede territory still under Ukrainian control. Russian negotiators demanded that Ukrainian forces leave those 4 provinces which Russia has claimed through totally bogus referenda to have legally annexed. Those provinces are Zaporizhia, Kherson, Luhansk and Donetsk. Their territory combined is the equivalent of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. This is a significant amount of territory. Russia wants Ukraine to retreat, to surrender territory it has not yet lost, to surrender territory that Russia has been unable to capture in 3 years of this bloody conflict. Ukrainian officials have rejected those demands, called them new and unacceptable demands, said that Russia's demands were non-starters, and that appears to be where these talks have stalled. Of course, it comes after Russian President Putin refused to meet Zelensky at a summit in Turkey's capital, Ankara, with Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Now, the background to this is that America was putting pressure on both sides, but particularly suggesting Donald Trump and his closest aides, officials, suggesting that Kyiv was not serious and that Zelensky was not serious about peace. And in response to that, Zelensky said, fine, I will be in Turkey on Thursday, ready to meet Putin if he turns up. Did he turn up? No. In fact, what did we hear from Russia's foreign ministry? Their spokesman, Maria Zakharova, calling Zelensky a clown and a loser, resorting to ad hominem personal attacks, echoing perhaps the sort of language, that word loser, that we might expect to hear from Trump. Perhaps that was an attempt to appeal to Trump's view of the world. Donald Trump has come out, instead of criticising Putin for not turning up to these talks, instead of making any reference or acknowledgement of that sort of pathetic name-calling that we've seen from Russia, he's repeated this idea that he thinks he is the only person who can end the war. He said it's time for him and Putin to meet. He said that on the day that Putin swerved that summit in Ankara. He said that again today, the day of these first face-to-face talks between the Russian and Ukrainian delegations. Now, there was some upset from the Ukrainian side about what they call the low level, the lack of seniority among the Russian delegates, among the Russian negotiators. Many of the Russian team, in fact, were involved in those peace talks 3 years ago. Zelensky was described the team as theatre props, saying they didn't have any real authority and no clear mandate to make decisions. He said everybody knows who makes the decisions in Russia, and of course he was talking about President Putin. What we have seen is that Zelensky dispatched his defense minister, Rustem Umerov, to lead the Ukrainian delegation. Those talks took place today, that's Friday, as we're filming. And immediately after those talks broke up, we know that President Zelensky held a phone call with President Donald Trump and the leaders of Britain, France and Germany. Emmanuel Macron from France, Friedrich Merz from Germany and Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Now, those three European countries being referred to as the coalition of the willing, those are the ones that have been most forward-leaning in trying to support and potentially offer troops to support a peace. That's something Russia has rejected out of hand. And of course, President Donald Trump, because fundamentally he is the leader of the country with the most external sway and indeed who has invested the most political capital in trying to bring this war to an end. Is it any closer to an end? Well, today, no doubt, a significant moment on that path to peace. But the results so far pretty limited to that prisoner swap. We've seen prisoner swaps before. And has the fighting stopped? Absolutely not. Russia did pause its Shahed drone strikes over the VE Day, Victory in Europe anniversary, the 80th anniversary. That was the 8th and 9th of May, the 8th when most of the Allies commemorate it, the 9th of May when Russia celebrates or marks its Victory Day. But other than that, fighting continues, both sides continuing to launch airstrikes. Ukraine announcing today that it has lost an American F-16. It didn't go into details how, but it said the pilot managed to divert and crash land the plane on an unpopulated rural area and safely ejected. We've also seen spectacular footage emerging of what appears to be a successful Ukrainian missile strike on a Russian ammunition dump in occupied Crimea. And we know, and we've talked before on Frontline, about how Ukraine has invested a huge amount of effort in trying to degrade Russia's logistics, trying to erode its ability to prosecute this conflict by denying it its supplies. Of course, the most spectacular of those strikes on an ammunition dump was the one in Tver, where the explosions were so huge that they were actually measurable as small earthquakes on the Richter scale. Fighting across the front line has continued. Has not been much significant movement on the front line, but of course that is no consolation if you are one of the soldiers on either side paying the price for that friction with lives or limbs. Now, this is going to be a slightly shorter update than normal, and that's because I'm away on another assignment, and we're not going to have time, I'm afraid, this time to do questions. But if you do have any questions, please do ask them in the comments below, and as usual, I will try and answer as many as I can next time. I'll get into the comments, or I'll answer them ideally on next week's update. Thank you for watching Frontline, and look forward to seeing you next time. In a Ukrainian armoured vehicle, and we're heading towards the Russian border.